Hi there, this is Marielle Conception, your host of the My DPC Story podcast. Have you or someone you care about ever been burned by the U.S. healthcare system? If so, you are listening to the right video, because if you are listening, chances are the answer is yes. But the U.S. spends so much on healthcare. Why are so many Americans affected personally and especially financially by the healthcare system? Shouldn't that mean we have better healthcare access and treatment options? Shouldn't it be easy for us to be able to see our doctor when we need to instead of turning to the ER or urgent care? Historically, it's been seemingly impossible to answer these questions. But now that is changing through the direct primary care movement. This video that you have tuned into will bring you into the world of direct primary care and show you how physicians all over the country are changing the way they practice so patients from all backgrounds get the high quality care they need and deserve, which makes for both happy patients and physicians. Learn even more by subscribing to the My DPC Story YouTube channel. Find us on all major podcast platforms. Find us on socials at My DPC Story and at mydpcstory.com. There you can find resources including how to find a DPC doctor near you, conferences about DPC, DPC startup guides and advice, a store with DPC swag, and even a mapper showing where podcast guests are practicing. Thanks for tuning in to hear about this powerful movement. Now, on to the episode. Direct primary care is an innovative, alternative path to insurance-driven healthcare. Typically, a patient pays their doctor a low monthly membership and, in return, builds a lasting relationship with their doctor and has their doctor available at their fingertips. Welcome to the My DPC Story podcast, where each week you will hear the ever-so-relatable stories shared by physicians who have chosen to practice medicine in their individual communities through the direct primary care model. I'm your host, Marielle Conception, family physician, DPC owner, and former fee-for-service doctor. I hope you enjoy today's episode and come away feeling inspired about the future of patient care, direct primary care.
Direct primary care is about restoring the doctor-patient relationship.
DPC is giving excellent, small batch, unrushed care to our local community.
We are doctors Jake and Christina Much of Defiant Direct Primary Care. And this is our DPC story.
Today on the podcast, we have husband and wife team doctors Christina and Jake Much of Defiant DPC. They both attended college at William and Mary, and then they went on to attend the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine. The team opened Defiant DPC this past August 2020. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Christina and Dr. Jake.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
Thanks very much. We're really excited.
So you guys are fresh out of residency, and I love that you've already opened your doors. I wanted to ask, to start our talk, as the DPC movement is becoming more mainstream, how did you guys come to learn about DPC, and what was the process like deciding to open right out of residency?
You know, it's funny because even though the DPC movement has been gaining a lot of traction, especially within the past few years, it was actually something that we discovered, I want to say back in like 2010 or so. It was an article that we came across. Dr. Jay Parkinson, he was one of the first people to do anything like direct primary care out of New York. And I read an article how he described his DPC house call practice, and it just kind of blew up. Like, his site went viral, and I started following it and reading more about this whole movement. And I think that was the first point where I kind of envisioned, okay, if I were to decide to go and become a doctor, what exactly would a practice look like? And I hadn't even decided what a specialty was. I just kind of looked at that and said, wow, that's really cool.
Another reason we were drawn to his story was that we had contemplated family medicine in general and community health, and kind of wanting to bring healthcare to communities that were lacking access, lacking transportation, lacking the resources they needed to get the same healthcare many other communities were getting. And he specifically targeted a lot of the communities that were kind of that stereotypical starving artist type community, artists, actors, comedians, people who generally did not have insurance and needed healthcare too. And so he made it work. He made the overhead work and made, his practice model work, despite the fact that he wasn't necessarily bringing care to the most financially well-to-do communities.
I really love that you guys learned and followed his story and have developed your own DPC. I definitely think that it is easier for us who are going into the DPC journey recently to look back and see how successful other people can be. It definitely helps people on their DPC journey when there's sometimes tough days out there. But at the end of the day, that idea of bringing affordable, accessible medicine to all is something that we can really make happen. And you guys are doing that. So congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
I want to ask, with regards to the people who are still in residency or about to enter residency, what advice would you guys have for those contemplating a similar path?
I would say do not be too quick to sign on to a contracted job. So when you're in your third year of residency, you feel very pressured to sign on and find a job very quick. And sometimes it leads you to being pressured to find anything and just feel like there's no time and that you don't have the ability to really sit back and say, what do I want in a career? What do I want my job to look like? And there are so many more options out there. And so really taking that time to say, okay, there is hospital employed jobs. There are private practice doctors that are still around. There's, federally qualified health clinics. There's so many options. And I think in residency, because they're hospital sponsored, that's kind of all you tend to see.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would say that a lot of times when you have medical students and residents who have been on this track for so long in a medical hierarchy and like this is the way things are kind of mindset, one of the temptations is just to go into a safe and stable track. And one of the things that we discovered was that sometimes the world changes a little bit and things that were previously labeled as the safe bet actually seemed far more risky because the world has certainly changed. And so we realized that, and certainly advice that I would give to residents and medical students is if you've already decided on your specialty, that's one thing. And if you're going down the path of direct primary care, it is really helpful to figure out what it is that really makes you feel like you're doing your best work. So I know that I love disproportionately being able to spend as much time as I need with a patient. And I never want to have to apologize for running. I never want there to run late or have to, apologize for running late again. I want to be able to spend however much time is needed to solve the problems. And so if that's the goal, then you as a DPC doctor can kind of reverse engineer that and say, okay, so what is the schedule going to look like so I can create those conditions I say I want? And that autonomy for me is one of the biggest values. And it's been really impactful as we grow our practice because we can say to a patient, hey, if we're going to solve this problem, it may take more than 30 minutes or so. And so we're looking forward to being able to spend all of that extra time getting to know you and figuring out how to best manage your care.
It's ironic that you guys bring up the points that you do because you're so right. One, in that this is this meaning the corporate system is all we know because this is the corporations or who runs our residencies. But I think that, that idea of getting the golden handcuffs right out of residency so that you have a temporary satisfaction, a salary that might be guaranteed for 1 to 2 years, and then that the third year or the fourth year, the RVU contracts start popping up. It is something that people do need to look into the future about, especially because that you really can lock yourself into a bad situation that, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you might regret. And so kudos to you guys for doing this right out of residency. I hope that your word gets out to other residents and that your words allow them to have the courage to choose a path like you guys have.
I appreciate that.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not without risk, but it's kind of like anything else in medicine. It's always the risks versus benefits, right? And so obviously everybody's situation is different. And we were fortunate enough to be in a situation where we felt comfortable doing it right out of residency. But I think it's also like good for residents to know that there's many different paths to the same thing, just like with picking specialties or getting into med school. And so just because one person did it, 20 years after fee for service versus right out of residency versus X, Y, or Z, there's so many different ways to get back to DPC. And so it just will be a different journey for everyone, but we're grateful that we were in the place that we can make it happen.
Yeah. And I would say that medical students tend to be very risk averse. We're selected for being cautious and always erring on the side of caution because our mindset as we're growing through the medical system is one of patient safety. But that's not the same thing as calculating for, a lifelong and enjoyable practice of medicine. And what I mean is that when we're balancing the risks and benefits of deciding to go through with DPC, a lot of times jobs that are employed may feel safe, but that's under the guise of doing a specific set of tasks that someone's telling you to do. Whereas we kind of looked at it and said, okay, what is truly more risky? Being in a system where you see 30 patients a day for 30 years and potentially burn out or quit medicine early because you're so burned out, or taking a small risk now that other people have already demonstrated as a successful model and potentially having an entire lifetime of an enjoyable and successful practice.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you guys about how it felt last summer when you guys were opening your doors for the first time.
That's a great question. It was a mixed bag of emotions for sure. I think it was both absolutely exhilarating with equal parts terrifying. And I actually very vividly remember posting in the DPC doctor group and being like, did everybody else feel this way? Because I'm really excited, but I'm also very terrified. Can I do this? And got back such overwhelming support that it was the day, went through and it worked out. And there were definitely hiccups by many means in terms of business logistics and renovation logistics and all sorts of fun stories. But in the end, it was, I feel like, triumphant, even though it wasn't perfect.
Yeah. And I think that, we're so, I guess, bred as medical students to that perfection is the mark of success. And really that's not as helpful a mindset when you're carving your own path. There's going to be things that, that the whole journey is defined by obstacles. And so going through and assuming that each one you'll instantly know the right answer before you encounter it is a very tough task to demand of anyone. And so looking at each obstacle that's presented to you as an opportunity has been a huge mindset shift for me personally, because I tend to be very neurotic about these things. And in doing so, it's helped me understand that, hey, we're going up a hill, but it's worth it. And, it may burn a little bit as you go through, but you're getting stronger each day. And that's been very helpful for me as we kind of manage the ups and downs, all of the wonderful highs and lows that come with doing your own practice.
Absolutely. And those are lessons that I hope people will take to heart. We hear over and over from different people in different words the gist of when a person opens a DPC, it really is opening a new chapter of personal growth.
Yeah.
This is definitely something that where I'm glad you guys felt supported on your first day, even though you did feel a little bit terrified, because the support is unquestionable out there for sure.
Definitely. And the whole small business side of things, I think sometimes can be something that hinders people from thinking about DPC as an option or hesitating to think about whether or not it's right for them. But it is definitely learnable, and it'll have its ups and downs. But like Jake said, it's so worth it in order to have the freedom to treat patients how you see fit. And it's definitely something that you will have support doing, because there are so many DPC doctors before us who have helped us out with that side of it. And we learned medicine, right? Like we all went through medical school. That is so hard. And so you can learn small business. It'll be a fun learning opportunity, as Jake said, and you will have many challenges, but it's definitely doable.
I can't agree with you more on that, because just thinking about, all the lectures and all the rotations we had to live through in medical school, I can't agree with you more. I want to shift the conversation to while you guys were in medical school, you had a wonderful experience doing medicine in the Himalayas. Medical missions are definitely something I want to expose my sons to later on, as they really make you see and appreciate life differently. So please share with us your guys' experience in the Himalayas.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Right between our first and second year, I want to say, God, it was a while ago, we had an opportunity that just sprung up to do a medical outreach trip to the Himalayas. And it was a really different type of medical outreach trip, specifically because it was sustainable. And so the entire model that this particular company used wasn't kind of a one-off medical, voluntourism, as I've heard it called before. Rather, it was a rotating set of clinics that go around, I believe it was 9 villages, and rotate year-round, so that even though the providers may change, there's kind of a core set of providers that are there, and they're able to provide some continuity of care, which was extremely impactful to be able to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we wanted to support a outreach organization that had that right mindset. And his ultimate goal was to eventually have a permanent clinic there. But that takes time and years. And so his goal, this gentleman that organized it, was to make sure that there was some sort of healthcare throughout the year, not just once a year.
It was, I guess, one of the biggest lessons that I learned was when you go over there, you go with kind of a tool chest of medications that are available to you, and they, set up the pharmacy, and, if you need something, it's there, but if you run out, you run out. And so for us, it was a learning opportunity about minimalism in medicine and what really matters and what's really important. And when you see people who have suffered from chronic illnesses, and maybe there isn't a medication there to be able to treat it, you can really get the opportunity to connect with them and talk to them about ways to prevent further injury and damage. For example, blindness is very common there, mostly because of the sun, the sand, that kind of thing, when you go up to the higher elevations. And so as a result, preventive measures, even as simple as having sunglasses that were passed out, can make a huge difference in that person's life. And it doesn't have to always be a complicated medical regimen. Being able to actually spend time with people and listen to them is, for me, that was the moment where I realized, okay, there's some deeper connection that happens when you sit down and actually listen to someone, and you can make a big difference in their life when that happens.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to have translators. And so, of course, there was that language barrier, but even through that language barrier, we were able to actually, dissect people's day-to-day lives and kind of get to the etiology of why they were having the issues they were having. And so much of it was preventable. And I think that played a big role in our kind of forming love of family medicine, is realizing that when you take the time to put the whole picture together and kind of have that holistic view of what's their day-to-day, what's their nutrition, what's their family support, and developing a plan that is sustainable even when the medications have run out. Mm-hmm. And getting to the kind of root cause of things and how far that can go. And then also kind of really realizing that even though we were half a world away, that so many of the issues that they were having, we were seeing in the West Virginian population too, that we weren't so different, even though we were so far apart. And often those preventative measures, regular dental care, regular checkups, things like that, were very difficult for even our patients in these rural West Virginia towns to and all across America, have those issues again with access. So it was another reiteration of how important just access to medication, how important access to medicine is. And just by being there for people, you can have a huge impact, even if you might not have every trick in the bag.
I can easily see how you guys have been able to use your experience there to strengthen your desire and your drive to do DPC, because yes, access to care is exactly what the DPC movement is targeting. And I empathize with you when you share your story. I went to Creighton Medical School, where they have a program that does medical volunteerism, and they also have a program that does participate in a clinic in the Dominican Republic where year-round there's care. And you really do appreciate those differences between the different types of care that you can provide, especially when there is a year-round clinic. So that's wonderful that you guys got to experience that firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to shift to something that you guys mentioned on your FAQ list. And one of the questions in the FAQs was, do you intend to specialize in anything? And I really chuckled at this because I find it funny that as family medicine doctors, I hear this and I scratch my head and I think to myself, do you know how complicated the human body is? So being responsible for managing the human body, especially in a generalized sense, is a specialty for sure. And on that note, you guys are both DOs. So doctors of osteopathic medicine, for those of you unfamiliar with the term DO. In regards to osteopathy in your practice, how are you incorporating it into your daily practice with your patients?
Yeah, so definitely. I remember when we put down that question, we put it on the website because it was coming up when we were on the vendor stand for a farmer's market. What are you going to specialize in? Or do you have an intent to further specialize? And, it's not everybody, I think, knows in the community that family medicine is a specialty. And I think it's really up to us to be able to educate them. We kind of tell people that, family medicine is a specialty, but we function as generalists, and we're able to treat, 85 to 90% of what somebody encounters in their daily life. But I think when we really peeled that back and saw what they were asking, it was really, when they say, are you intending to specialize? They were asking, are you intending to stick around with us for the long haul, or is this kind of a waypoint as you go off to a fellowship and disappear? And when I hear how long have you been here, or where are you from? I hear that kind of concern, because many people have had this experience where their doctors just up and leave and disappear, and they feel left behind, and all of these issues that now they have to remember and figure out how to manage and start from scratch again. And it can be a very frustrating experience. And so we wanted to really emphasize the fact that the idea of being able to be the local doctors for a community is I tell people it's like the secret sauce to our lives. It's the thing that gets us up in the morning with a big smile on our face And as we go to work and we're super excited. And so I want to be clear to people who do have that question that we don't intend on going anywhere.
Around for the long haul.
Yeah. And so when it comes to how we incorporate the osteopathic side of that, we're trained to diagnose and treat a wide variety of conditions using our hands and using osteopathic manipulative therapy, or OMT as it's called. And in addition to that, we do spend a lot of time talking about those connections between, mind and body and spirit, and finding ways to make sure that we're treating the root cause of an illness. And that is an important tenet to us. And I think a lot of people in the community really resonate with that. So what we tend to do is, we use that mindset whenever we see a patient. And then if there's something specific that needs to be focused on as we do a physical exam or a treatment, we do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and kind of going back to our training days in our osteopathic community in Lewisburg, West Virginia, one of the things that, again, drew us to family medicine and kind of being so grateful for being out there for our training was that there were doctors there that had been there their whole lives, and they knew generations and generations, and they were the doctor of the town. And so, trying to put people at ease to say, hey, we are around for the long haul, because this is why we're doing it. This is why we do family medicine, because we want to know multiple generations and really get to know everybody along their lifetime and be there for their best times and their worst times and everything in between. And I think we got to really see the epitome of that at our school because of the small town that it was in. That said, we also were very fortunate to have great training in the manipulation therapy, and not everybody continues to use that modality, but we have found that it's really great as adjunctive therapy to not only musculoskeletal complaints, but headaches and constipation and sinus problems. And it really can be the difference of having somebody walk out already starting to feel better before they even go and pick up their antibiotics. So kind of having that multimodality approach is really satisfying. And sometimes we're able to avoid medications with side effects altogether because we get such a great response with those treatments. But it's also nice to be able to use medications when appropriate too. It's just kind of, again, another tool in the toolbox that we can provide. And we were actually able to do that in the Himalayas. So it's something that's kind of beautiful because you can do anywhere. As long as your hands are there, you can do it. Mm-hmm. And so it's been kind of neat to be able to see how that works across the world in every state and every town.
I have become a huge fan of podcasts. Ever since Sarah Koenig hosted the first season of Serial, I was hooked. Now, creating this podcast has become part of my daily life. While it is an exciting new hobby, I also see it as a privilege that I get to interview so many DPC and direct care doctors. If you are interested in starting a podcast, let me tell you a little bit about Anchor. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast as well with no minimum listenership. It's basically everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's such a good feeling, and it's such a good thing to hear that you are using your osteopathic training for everyday issues as well as possibly more chronic issues, but that you're able to do all of that, like you said, Christina, without necessarily jumping to a pill as the first line treatment. And I know that you guys also mentioned going to the farmers market. So I would love to hear how that experience has been, because a lot of people do meet and greets for potential patients online or in person or over the phone. But you guys have this opportunity doing talks with patients at the farmers market. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we definitely have had to adapt with COVID because we, had all these grand ideas of having open houses and kind of doing different things. But we were really fortunate to know a really lovely lady that's in charge of this farmers market, and we're so grateful that we were able to have a space there. And we thought, what better way to, meet the community than where the community goes every Saturday. And we personally are huge fans of farmers markets. It's kind of our happy place on Saturday mornings. And we love getting to talk to all the vendors and meeting people there and definitely seeing all the dogs.
Yeah.
So it's just a great place to kind of really feel the vibe of the community, get to know people, get to know small businesses. And so with COVID, it was definitely safer to do something outside as well. So it was kind of a perfect situation. And so, so we just kind of set up our little table and, answer any questions that people might have about our practice, especially with us, being a different model and it being relatively new to our area. It was a perfect way to kind of share why we were doing it, why we were breaking away from the mold and what it meant for them and kind of how it worked logistically. And overall, it's been such a great positive experience because even if patients already have a primary care doctor or they're not looking for a PCP, they're still, again, it's an added support. Everybody's really excited about why we're doing it. And I think it's something everybody can get behind because, again, it's just increasing access and increasing affordability and increasing time with your doctor. And so people have just been really excited about what we're doing, even if they might not sign on. They're just super supportive of us trying to break away from the mainstream healthcare system.
I would also say that a lot of times, especially as you're starting a DPC practice, our experience was for the first few months, almost like we're operating in a vacuum where maybe you talk to somebody about it and they'd be like, they would get like a positive response, but you're still setting up the website and getting all of these logistical things together, wondering how is the community even going to respond to this? Is this going to be something that people would want? And so there's a lot of self-doubt that comes with those first few months because it's hard and you're wondering, am I crazy in doing all of this? But when we were able to talk to people in the farmers market, you can see their eyes just light up when you tell them about your mission and you tell them what you're passionate about and what you hope healthcare will look like in the coming years and how you hope to change how healthcare is practiced. And being able to see people just viscerally react in such a positive way to that was this, I would say that it was this really positive support for us that kind of helped us charge on even farther and say, yeah, I think we're on the right track here.
That feeling of being unsure if you're doing the right thing or if you're making the right move. I don't know anyone who's felt 110% confident once they open up their DPC doors as they're onboarding patients. So absolutely, you guys, have lived that and have made it through. And that's wonderful that even though you might not have patients sign up because of your farmers market tabling today, that definitely does not mean that they won't in the future, because there are some DPCs who where their patients have a primary for their annual or for their their Medicare covered labs once a year, but who do they have for their everyday needs? They have a DPC doctor on the side. So I hope that really translates into you guys continuing your strong presence in the community. But that's wonderful that you guys still have that accessible during COVID times, because it's really rare to find things like that these days.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I will say for all of the residents thinking about DPC, one of the other great things about talking to the community is you get a chance to really get comfortable talking about what you do. Because I guess sometimes we're taught not to talk about ourselves, not to, bring these kinds of things up, but really you're talking to a community about a problem that they have and wanting to help them with it. And so the more comfortable you can get getting out of your comfort zone and I think that it does wonders for connecting with people in the community, where you end up having an opportunity, being able to talk to someone and really reach out to a community you didn't even know about when you're willing to have those conversations with people.
Yes, absolutely. I want to ask you guys a little bit about the practice specifically. Because both of you guys are practicing, what do your hours look like? And are there times when both of you are seeing patients, or does one manage the virtual side of things and the other one goes into the clinic? How is it working for you?
That is a great question. So it's definitely dynamic. We're in week, we just finished week 4. So we're definitely, what's nice, we have the freedom to change the rules, and we've never had so much control over our schedule before. So it's definitely changed from week to week, I would say. But it's really great because we can respond to the needs of the clinic, the needs of the business administration side, and the needs of the patients, and have that flexibility, because medicine is definitely dynamic in itself. So right now, our hours are technically 9 to 4 is our last appointment visit, but we try to kind of have things in the middle of the day, so kind of like a 10 to 2 if we can, for routine things, so that we can do some admin in the morning, and then make sure we have time to get to text messages, emails, do any videos or any add-ons that we might need that come acutely at the end of the day, which is really a breath of fresh air, because as you know, in the fee-for-service system, every inch of your day you're seeing 30 patients, and it's this very uncomfortable, very unsafe feeling pace where you don't feel like you have the time to really spend enough time with the patients that are in the office, or spend time answering people's questions virtually. And so being able to kind of make a schedule so that we can accommodate all our patients and all different modalities of care is very refreshing.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And it's part of that design. It's extremely intentional, because we know and have thought about and really explored in the months prior to the practice what it is that makes us tick. What is it about having a practice that's most important to us? And connecting with people and having autonomy are pretty much the top things. And so we back engineered and decided, okay, what would that schedule look like? And that's how we arrived at it.
Mm-hmm. In terms of seeing patients at the same time, we're still building our numbers. So we've, I think for the most part, have had, mostly, one of us is seeing a patient at a time. But there has been, as we're getting busier, times where we're both seeing patients. And since we both are, trained to do kind of the, all the medical side of things, meaning we both do our own phlebotomy, we both do our own vitals, rooming process, etc. That hasn't been, an issue at all. And we can continue to do that. And then what we've done is try to automate the business administration side as much as possible. And the EMRs that are out there for direct primary care do a beautiful job of helping with that, because, especially with such a simple billing model, that's a set it and forget it. And so there's very little to manage there. And then scheduling is pretty simple as well, and embedded into the EMR. Automatic reminders are within the EMR, so you don't have anyone who's like having to call and do those separately. And then having our allotted time to do kind of admin tasks that aren't as time sensitive. It's been working pretty well. It's busy, but we've been able to kind of fit everything we need to in the business administration side of things as needed.
Yeah, and I would say that getting that additional training through your residency or your past medical experience in phlebotomy and getting comfortable with some of those tasks is a wonderful service that you can provide to your patients. They are not used to having, at least from what I've been told, not used to having a doctor look them in the eye as opposed to at a computer screen, nor are they used to someone listening, spending the time, and certainly not doing the vitals and the blood draws. It's a wonderful high-touch way of showing a patient that you are there for them. And so we found that to be a wonderful thing to add to the practice. And so if you've taken care of the medical assistant type roles, as well as obviating the needs for billing and coding, and being able to do your own scheduling and optimizing a lot of these things that are usually quite intensive for a standard fee-for-service practice, now you're at the point where you can operate with a very lean model, and that allows you to provide even more value to your patients. And so what we've seen is that at this point, the fears of whether or not we are going to, raise money to get this big staff and have, everybody on service. In fact, none of those things are really necessary. And our patients at this point are really enjoying that one-on-one interaction.
Another question I have with regards to your clinical practice is that you guys have chosen to not prescribe Schedule II medications like opioids, amphetamines. Tell us about how you decided not to prescribe these versus choosing to prescribe them.
Yeah, it was kind of something we put a lot of thought into, because we know ultimately the state that the country is in regarding some of these medications. And we also looked at what our comfort level is and what we can do with all of these things. So ultimately, when we talk to patients, we have an honest conversation. We say, this is the type of practice where we're looking to do something very different. We want to be able to really spend time getting to know you and find the best possible medical care that we can get you, and making sure that we're there every step of the way for you. And so when we looked at exactly what it is that we wanted to provide to patients, we found that a lot of patients were really interested in exploring other modalities entirely. And so they wanted to focus very much on, sleep, nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, all of these other things in order to decrease their use of certain types of medications, and especially with Schedule IIs. A lot of these people have been treated with some of those medications before, and they say, they're not interested in that anymore. And so while we do still have our DEA licenses, and we still use our medical judgment to be able to say, okay, for this acute issue, is this something that needs kind of an intense form medication? We're also, because we get to know this patient and have a deep understanding of where they're coming from and what kind of medical issues they're struggling with, I feel like we can provide the best care possible that way. And for us, as we're looking to move forward with our practice, we saw that there wasn't a lot of space right there for those types of medications. Yeah, and it's also one of the things that is, I think, underemphasized is the fact that pain management has a wide variety of procedures and medications and modalities that are open, and that it's not just being on chronic opiates. Mm-hmm. And so being able to reach out as a new DPC practice to members of our specialist community and see what it is they specialize in, what it is they're offering to the community, and how can we make sure that people with those needs are getting plugged into the system in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. So we are so adamant about holistic care, but it doesn't always mean that we have the best holistic care for them. And I think that kind of is adding on your pain management, is that there's some specialists that do just such a great job with that one ailment that may use a Schedule II, but they have this multimodality holistic approach in addition to that really gets people to their health goals that we just sometimes can't provide because of our, just not having that same specialty. And I think recognizing the value in those different colleagues is important.
Now, another thing that DPC doctors face, whether they're in a DPC role or whether they're contemplating a DPC role, is Medicare versus not to do Medicare, or Medicare or to not accept Medicare. So for you guys, at this time, you're not accepting Medicare patients, but are planning to, if I'm reading the website correctly. So how are you managing pre-enrollment for Medicare patients that you could accept in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give a little bit of background, there are a lot of government rules regarding Medicare. It is assumed that every physician is going to be opt-in, and thus seeing Medicare patients under Medicare rules, which in the DPC world can be prohibitive. It is essentially against the law for a Medicare patient to pay cash to a DPC or have any form of payment to a DPC doctor. It's I believe the term is patient inducement, and there's a lot of legal concerns regarding that. But putting all of the legal mumbo jumbo aside, the whole point here is how can patients with Medicare see direct primary care doctors if they want to. And so in order to make that happen, the physician has to opt out of Medicare. And essentially you are sending a letter to Medicare saying, or the legal representatives of Medicare saying that you are not interested in participating in their insurance program. And they check for that letter 4 times a year, so quarterly, and it needs to be in a month in advance. And so you have to check to see whether or not you are on the opted out status to see if it is even legal for you to see a Medicare patient. And this leads to a lot of frustrating questions, or I should say patients who have questions and are frustrated by not being able to see a direct primary care doctor if they so choose. And so what we have done is providing some counseling to the patients who are signing up. When they sign up with our practice, so they go in and schedule an appointment, we get a notification saying, hey, someone's interested in getting a phone consultation and hearing more about the practice. And we use that as an opportunity to talk to them about some of the regulations that come with direct primary care, and specifically if they have Medicare insurance, where we stand on that. And so basically, as it stands, we are in that opt-out period where that should be coming live in the next month or so. And so we tentatively will schedule patients in anticipation of that opt-out status going through. And once we have an idea in October if that can be confirmed, we'll go ahead and see those patients. But we do want to make sure that we're following any type of federal regulations while we're seeing our patients.
Right. We won't confirm those. We will not confirm those appointments until we have given the go ahead by the government.
That's a little sticky.
Yeah.
So that's one of the very few legal red tape things that DPC doctors or people who are considering DPC should be aware of. And there are plenty of really great websites that can show you how to opt out of Medicare so that you can have a relationship with those Medicare patients.
That said, part of the reason why it's a difficult decision about whether or not to opt out is because oftentimes physicians have to do some moonlighting or side jobs on the weekends in order to sustain their practice as it grows. And so you cannot typically do those moonlighting opportunities if you are not opted in Medicare. There are a few exceptions to that that don't count for that. But in general, you need to be able to be in Medicare in order to moonlight on the side. And that's why people wait to opt out of Medicare until their practice grows enough to be sustainable on its own. That said, we are, again, in a very fortunate situation where there's 2 of us. And so I will not opt out of Medicare and not see Medicare patients at all until we don't need to do that moonlighting on the side. And hopefully I can personally opt out in the spring in the next quarterly opt-out period. But that way we kind of have that ability to grab some shifts here and there to make our practice sustainable if we need to.
Yeah. And fortunately, our practice has been growing to the point where at that point it doesn't appear to be the case. So
yeah, that is the hope.
We're very excited about that.
I'm really glad to hear that you guys have a thriving practice being open since August 1st and that you have a strategy in place so that you have protection in case you need to have some extra shifts while you're building up your patient panel in your DPC. With you guys being back in the Virginia area and nearby where you went to college and medical school, do you guys plan on having either training opportunities or volunteer training opportunities available to those interested in learning about your model and learning about your clinic in the future?
Absolutely. We are so excited to eventually have medical students, pre-med students, physicians who are just looking to kind of see what we're doing and are interested in DPC. It's definitely, an understatement to say that we have gained so much priceless experience from those who were nice enough to let us shadow during those same stages, and being able to give it back and pay it forward, if you will, is something that we're really excited to do. That said, we want to also make sure that we, have a great experience for those people. So we're thinking about, starting to offer that in the spring once we've kind of established everything and figured out all the small business nitty gritty and so forth.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're being as helpful as possible to the people who are, taking time out of their day to come see how we do things. So we loved doing teaching and residency and working with learners. And so anybody who's interested, we're very interested in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Right now, we're doing a lot of emails and messages. And so kind of trying to reach out that way. And so if there are any students listening or anyone DPC interested, we are always about, meeting up for a drink or having them come by the practice or chatting on email or on the phone to kind of, again, pay forward kind of all the stuff we've learned so far.
Now, I want to ask you guys some rapid fire questions. The first is, how did you come up with your DPC name and how did you create your logo?
Can I do the name first?
Go for it.
So the Defiant name definitely embodies kind of how we were feeling in the traditional fee-for-service system. We were really honestly fed up with patients waiting an hour in the waiting room to see us just to be rushed through a 5-minute visit. And it honestly just broke my heart every day. I felt like I wasn't able to give the level of care I wanted or the amount of attention, and the times, patients have been told to come back if they have another, complaint after they already took a half day off work and, brought 2 kids with them and took 2 buses to get to their appointment. And now you're saying they only get 1 complaint per visit. I mean, it was a travesty to me. And so we wanted to get out of that system, break the mold, say there is a better way. And if we don't stand up for our patients and we stay in the system, then we're saying that it's okay by default, and it's not okay. And so it was time for us to be defiant and go against the system and start doing things the way that we felt was morally aligned with our beliefs.
Yeah. In terms of the logo, we brainstormed and we went through a couple of different iterations, but when we decided on the Defiant J, we never really had a name for that thing, but we knew that there was this feeling of being caged in medicine. And we really wanted to emphasize that this is a completely different thing than anybody has seen in our community. And we wanted to give that feeling of really breaking out of the system and of being a little bit freer to do things as whatever's best for the patient and that conversation we have with them. So we wanted to choose a symbol that really emphasized that independence and that breaking free of a lot of the things that the modern healthcare system cages patients and physicians into.
The sentiments that you guys shared, it's definitely represented in your name and logo. So kudos to you guys. Do you have any tech or tools that you use and love?
We are about to open up the floodgates. So we were, from first principles, really wanting to create this practice in a very lean way. And so a lot of things that would have been going out to, website designers or design firms or that kind of stuff, we just tried to do that ourselves. And so a lot of the tech that we used was designed to build the website, do video recordings, as well as the logo and that kind of thing. So none of that is necessarily mandatory, but it certainly does help. And I do have a few things that I found incredibly useful. The first one would be the iPhone in your pocket, or whatever smartphone you have, because that is the camera that we used for all of our filming and for all of our photo shoots. We did all of that stuff ourselves, just got really basic equipment and made it happen. We used a web app, Snapseed, for a lot of our editing of photos to get a more professional look from them. And when we were doing our videos, I think that was our bigger purchase. We did like a Final Cut Pro 10, I guess is what we were using. And so we're hoping to build with that a little bit more in the future as we're making space for it in our practice. But other things like there's other like tech that we used in general, but a lot of it was, I would say, like you can get 90% of the way there with something called Pixelmator, which is a very inexpensive, essentially like a Photoshop type app for the desktop. And we use that to do pretty much all of our web design. We went through Squarespace for our web hosting, and we used simple things. I think there was, for our microphone, we used a Blue Yeti USB microphone from years ago, and that did just fine. For writing, we used a Wacom tablet for digital artwork, but it's not even mandatory or required by any means. And then for some of our moving shots, we kind of took an iPhone and put it on a gimbal, and one of those handheld ones, and just kind of moved it around. So it's all a bunch of experimentation, I would say. And the tech wasn't something that we did all at once. It's something we did over, months, and we were always kind of fiddling with art and web stuff. So what I would say is don't feel overwhelmed by all of the tech that I just, I guess, put out there. But I will say that you can do far more than you may think you can with just the tech that you have in your pocket. And so it's highly attainable, and it isn't nearly as insurmountable as I originally thought. So it just requires a little bit of the same ingenuity that a lot of DPC doctors have shown before us. Yeah, and just so you know, we have no financial relationship with any of these companies. We just found it to be extremely useful, and it saved us a ton of time and money. But if any of those companies are out there, please consider sponsoring us. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's where we stand on it right now.
For those who are on the point of jumping into DPC but are still hesitating, what words would you tell those people to give them one last push to help them gain that confidence to make that jump?
First, do it. Just absolutely do it. There's this common feeling on Sunday nights that I think is shared across all careers of this nervousness that comes with having to go to work on Monday morning and having this kind of feeling of being like, oh, I can't wait until Saturday. I can't wait till the weekend. And we don't have that anymore. Like every day, and I'm not trying to be like cheesy or like untruthful, like there's hard times for sure, but we wake up every day excited to do medicine again. We're excited to learn for our patients and to, do continuing education for the sake of our patients, and see them in the clinic. And every time we get a call or a text, it's not like, it's not a burden. We're like, oh my God, I'm so glad they reached out. Like, thank goodness they called us and didn't go to urgent care. Like, that's what we're here for. That's what we live for. This is a calling and not a job anymore. And so we are just so grateful that we took that plunge and got to kind of take back medicine and take back this career, and make it something that we look forward to and don't want to stop doing, to the point where we, sometimes do it on the weekends and have trouble putting down our business side of the work because we're just so excited to be doing what we're doing again. And it's refreshing.
Normally, I give a ton of advice and just kind of bombard people with it, but I think you said it better than I could. So I'll just leave it at that and say, yeah, just do it.
What is the best way for others to reach out to you guys if they want to follow up after this podcast?
Absolutely. So whatever modality works for them, our handle is at Defiant DPC for both Facebook and Instagram, and you can message us through either of those. And then our email is info@defiantdpc.com. And yeah, just reach out. We can always set up a time to chat or call or Skype or what have you. We're pretty flexible.
Yeah.
Next week, look forward to hearing from Dr. Jennifer Hetrick of Hetrick Health. Until then, this is Marielle Conception. For more information on this episode and much more, please visit mydpcstory.wixsite.com/my site. That's mydpcstory.wixsite.com/MYSITE.